This rare audio recording of a lecture by Sybil Leek was gifted to Reverend Doctor Dikki-Jo Mullen by Sybil following the 1978 presentation. We hear Sybil speak about telepathy, ESP, astrology, the Sasquatch phenomenon, and a range of topics. This is an important record of a spiritual and mystic great who made a significant contribution to the understanding of the differences between mystery and what can be explained by careful exploration. Sybil helped demythologize the process of telepathy and other so-called mysteries. She presents the field of astrology as a method of understanding the possibilities of choice along our life paths. Enjoy this wonderful reflection by Sybil Leek on a range of metaphysical and Wiccan philosophical insights.
So that we cannot see what is there, but everything is there to be examined. Something fitted to inspire a sense of awe. For the word awe, I would like to substitute wonderment, because it is wonderment and the wondrous things that we search out, an exciting adventure. If we can open our eyes as we get over and see each day as a wondrous experience, we keep young and we'll keep on searching for the wonders. Something incomprehensible through being above human intelligence. Well, incomprehensible is a lengthy word, lacking in understanding. But I don't believe that a human being is ever understanding anything if the mind is left open, if we are prepared to see, not only with our eyes, but with the inner eyes, and if we are occasionally prepared to be guided by those who see perhaps a little better than us. Now we come to something intentionally kept secret and hidden. Well, we are in an enlightened age when we could put a man on the moon, when we are capable of studying anything. I don't think there is anything that should be intentionally kept secret if we want to find it. But we must have motivation to find and explore these mysteries. Supernatural, beyond or exceeding the powers of the laws of nature. The laws of nature, action and reaction. And we forget that. For one action, there will be a reaction. And so if we seek, there will be an action, a reaction of finding. And what are some of these mysteries of the supernatural, which we are so afraid of and are incomprehensible to human intelligence, according to Webster? There's telepathy. Now, telepathy is not the capability of reading a person's mind. It is a series of vibrations sent out from the brain, which is the organ of the mind, thinking part, which will be reached by someone else. It rather makes a human being into a human radio, but you have to switch into that. It doesn't always come naturally. Many people say, well, we're in great rapport. I can send messages to my husband, my lover, my child, whatever, and they will get it. But that is often at random. What becomes quite important in the study of the supernatural or the natural laws of nature is that we can harness some of these things and draw upon them in everyday life to use them. I think that in the last half of the 20th century, telepathy is going to be a very important part of our life because we do not communicate well on an everyday level. And so we're going to be thrown back into the areas of telepathy. About telepathy, unless you put the fear in it, the fear of being controlled by someone else. Not true. Because you have within you the ability to receive that message or not receive it, just as you have the ability to switch on to a radio program or a television show and switch off. Always remember that. But if you want to do telepathic experiments, try to do so with somebody with you to begin with. Keep a record of the messages sent. And be very accurate. Don't leave things in your imagination. Don't be wise after the event. Now, telepathy needs one transmitter and a receiver or more receivers to function. When we come to extrasensory perception, we do not need the other people. Extrasensory perception, extra awareness, relates to the psyche being alerted to something that is about to happen, that will happen, that maybe has happened in the past. And it is a very wonderful guide, even to people who are brought up to revere logic. because extrasensory perception, another so-called mystery, takes over when logic runs out, and it very often does in everyday life. An extrasensory perception, to me, mean nothing unless they are part of everyday life. If we develop this natural gift of extrasensory perception, then we can use it. It can become a guide, but it only becomes a guide when we have done a preliminary investigation into it to prove that it is accurate, to prove that we're not being led astray, to prove that we have, until a time comes, and you know that flash of intuition or ESP cannot be wrong and will guide you into something that is important in your everyday life. Extrasensory perception already plays a great part in our life because rather than telepathy, we don't have to rely on somebody else. It will come. One of the gravest dangers of extrasensory perception is to know what to do with it. If you get a flash about someone else, are you justified in telling danger, or should you keep your mouth shut? Now, what you have to realize is if you keep your mouth shut because you're afraid of being laughed at, you're doing grave injustice to what extrasensory perception is doing for you. Never be afraid. This is why we have mysteries. This is why we say supernatural. All these things are natural and are not meant to be mysteries. But ages of deception, ages of brainwashing have shrouded the beautiful things of life, the extra senses, the extra awareness, with this sense of mystery. If you have a flash, an intuition about someone else, you should let them know. If they laugh, it's good to laugh anyway. Laugh and grow fat. I've laughed a lot in my life. But at least you have followed through with that important prediction, that important ESP, that important awareness. But don't let your imagination run riot. One of the dangers and why we are still trapped into ideas of mystery is that the average human being is very emotional. And suddenly, ESP and telepathy are wonderful things that we can become emotional about. We have to learn to guard and guide our emotions so that what remains is a pure spark of reason, intelligence, and intuition merging together. And that has been considered mysterious and supernatural. And I can't, for the life of me, understand this. Because while extrasensory perception and telepathy are intangibles, astrology is not an intangible. Astrology is something very, very tangible. You can see each step that you take. But we have a group of 150 scientists taking an adverse astrology as nonsense. I called every one of them up and said, do you understand astrology? And they said, no. So they may be experts on nonsense, but they're not experts on astrology. The idea that planets influence our life is certainly not new. It has survived for some 6,000 years. There's an empiric as well as a traditional history that this is more we are beginning to understand it, aided by the very scientists who decry astrology, because they too are finding that intangibles affect our lives. What can be more intangible than someone pining away for love? What can be more intangible than someone pining away because they are lonely? You can't stretch out and feel lonely. It is in the act, so it is there. And so it is in astrology. Now, I'll take no nonsense from anyone who condemns astrology unless they have given it some thought and studied it. Because astrology starts with mathematical precision in the interpretation of the mathematics. Certainly, there may be a little romanticization. not always in the astrologer who has learned not to be emotional. When I have been teaching astrology, I've spent many, many hours telling my students these hieroglyphics as they are. You may love the person, you may be divinely influenced by the person, but if you are doing a correct chart, you will read this in the proper manner, unemotionally, and write it down as it is. So astrology is certainly not a mystery, and it's not supernatural. It is there as a skill and a discipline. Two things that we need to come into the occult sciences, because many people see the occult sciences as a reason to run wild with freedom, carrying a banner for freedom. But without discipline, we never know true freedom. And I would say that for anyone interested in studying the other occult sciences, astrology is a very good beginning. It will make, and if you're meant to go on, it certainly won't break you. If you haven't got the patience, then you give it up. And don't think because you weren't brilliant at mathematics that you can't do astrology. Things are very much more simplified these days than they were when I was young. And even the government puts out the ephemerides, which I think is very nice of them. People forget that. Another mystery of the supernatural is the subject of ghosts. Now, ghosts have fascinated people for a long time. They've fascinated generations of writers, generations of painters, generations of storytellers, and children. But the ghost phenomena is very nice because we can be a little bit afraid of it in a legitimate manner. We should have our neurosis and our fear sometimes. I had a neurosis and a fear, but I got over it. And the phenomena of ghosts really can be explained when you have come a little way along the line in studying the so-called supernatural and its mysteries and the occult sciences. Because the ghost phenomena is really not very much of a phenomena. If you believe that the spirit is, then energy can again go back into matter, then it is quite likely that you will see a ghost or hear a ghost or feel a ghost or even be able to measure a ghost. All these things are possible by study. Never condemn a ghost out of hand or else it will come to haunt you forever and you will deserve it. Years ago, the newspapers would do tremendous articles about me saying I went ghost hunting. I never hunted a ghost in my life. I was interested in ghosts because it was part of my search for truth. My search for truth in the matter of reincarnation, chiefly. I wanted to know. I was probably fortunate in my life that I was born and able to develop by studying sciences. And I have been able to be on both sides of the fence. I've been able to be involved in them as a medium, as a ghost hunter, as an astrologer, as somebody who studies palmistry, everything. I had a beautiful education in this. But on the other side, I've also been able to investigate, to look into things I didn't understand and to say, I don't know the answer, you tell me. And so I have really studied from the point of view that I have listened to other people telling me their experiences. I have been able to dismiss the idea that everything was caused by the wind or somebody left a door open. Because in the end, I firmly believe in reincarnation, that the spirit is indestructible and that the spirit can be earthbound and it can come back to leave messages, to convey spirit messages to you, or in extreme cases, to be very nasty to you, because poltergeists are not exactly the sort of people you want to share a house with at all. Another area which is exciting a great deal of interest today in the legends of Indian life. Now, I think if we could take the legends and see them as American Indian history instead of legends, then we would get somewhere in solving the mystery of them. Bigfoot can be either a great laugh or it can be something that we need to investigate. And we should not be afraid to do so. Because even, taking into account the very bad films made of Bigfoot with a zipper in his jacket, which we have to dismiss as a lie, there is in history some evidence that large races existed and in remote areas of the world have been able to sustain themselves. Well, it would be nice to understand them. It would be nice to meet them. Because if we're going to be ready to meet visitors from outer space, how nice to be able to meet those from our present environment. I would like to see food, not just eliminated as nonsense. Let's know for sure. Because there's a definite history that these large people, these different people, have been around. And we need to know about them. I was recently in the foothills of the Himalayas, and there is a sense of wonder there, not of mystery, but of wonder, that only comes in remote places. And it is not a feeling of loneliness. It is a feeling that somebody is around. I didn't see the abominable snowman, but I felt tremendous messages coming through in that particular part of the world. And yet you don't need to go to the Himalayas to find that. In the remote parts of Oregon, you could still find the same message. Now, this is picked up all around the world, and nearly always in these highly psychic areas, there is a history or a legend about some creature that once lived there and probably wonderful if we could find them. How wonderful if we could say this is no longer a mystery of the supernatural. Yes, there is someone here that has lived a long time, that has had their own energies and forces around and can make a contribution to our lives as we can make a contribution to theirs. After all, we have found in the Pacific tribes that have not been discovered for years, and they have been there. I don't think it's any more remote. We could find a group of giants and learn something from them. I don't like mysteries. I always want to know. Tell me there's a mystery, and I want to know why it is a mystery. I cheat on reading Agatha Christie books. I read the end first. It's so much fun, and then see how she got at it. But in the occult mysteries, you have to go slowly. You can't. You may see the end product, but there's nothing written out that you can. And that's why it is part of the experience of living to move slowly through these mysteries and say, oh, that was a mystery yesterday, but today I know it. And then share that mystery with others with an explanation, and then use what knowledge was in those mysteries. We have another mystery which excites everyone, particularly people, I think, in Florida. Now, expeditions go out. They're expensive to equip. They go out and we don't hear very much about them afterwards. I don't know why this is. Nobody disappears. They come back, but we don't hear too much about these expeditions. There's one out now in Bimini. Friend Scott Carpenter of Wisconsin called me and said, goodbye, I'm going on an expedition to Atlantis. I said, well, tell me all about it when you come back. Not a word. So that is a modern mystery. But the mystery of Atlantis as a lost continent, I do not think is really a mystery. It's such a mistake to think that the world only began 2,000 years ago, that there was nothing there. I think that we have had all this knowledge and that nothing is hidden from mankind. And it is always there for us. But we have to retrace our steps and more into understanding. One of the things about Atlantis is to understand not so much why it disappeared, because it was a bad continent. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it had to disappear at that time. But to know what Atlantis had that we can use in terms of knowledge and wisdom in our day, because we too may be heading towards our disaster period. And we ought to know how we can make the best of the years ahead of us. I really don't want to think of scientific expeditions only going in search of Atlantis. There is already proof of underground temples which link up with the temples in the Yucatan, in which with the pyramids in Egypt. And then we come to another mystery, the pyramids. Well, I'm sure we're going to have speakers on the pyramids, so I can't deal with those very much. But if you have stood anywhere near a pyramid, suddenly it is not a mystery. Now, I know I'm in a beautiful position that I do pick up things fairly quickly, not because I'm bright, but because I've trained myself with discipline to do this, and you too can do the same. Weren't just massive edifices put up as funeral parlors at all. There's lots beyond the pyramids. We have mathematics again, we have measurements, we have forces of energy that we can tune into. And these are not mysteries if we go with an open mind and say, I want to feel what there is near a pyramid. I want to understand it. There are plenty of books about the pyramids and pyramidology, and they are well worth studying, because you will see that nothing was left to chance that made the pyramid inch into a unit that we can now relate to in our present lives. It was not by chance that the pyramids were in that position. One other mystery of the universe, but not perhaps a supernatural one, is Stonehenge. Stonehenge is not unique. There are lesser Stonehenges through the world. Again, when you begin to study, you must always study. You cannot take it and say it's nonsense because this is someone else's opinion. Study all opinions. Professor Hawkins had a great book about Stonehenge. A lot of validity in it. But then you have to see Stonehenge again as a place of faith. A place where vibrations, as strong as those vibrations in Atlantis, go out. A place that you can tune into if you know how. And that is always the secret, if you know how.